Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. Bill's going to hand out some cards here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So, I'm over the contacts and transition group as we're going through this process. I know some may not know if you're visiting or a guest with us today. We're happy to have you with us. We're going through the School of Evangelism training for our congregation. It's just a way of which house to house, heart to heart. We're trying to reach out to people in our community and learn how to better do that. And a part of that process is we're taking prospects and people who we've been working with and we've been talking about in other Sunday mornings and other classes of training. And now we're talking about how do you lead from that contact to a Bible study? How do you transition into that? The way which he has this broken down is through like a sermon format. So I'm going to kind of just go through it that way. But this is a class, so if you want to, say something or raise your hand or just start talking, I welcome that. I don't think it's going to take very long for us to get through this. I also have some other notes that I'm going to refer to probably after we have just the full conversation about it, and then I'll try to take any questions and anything else if I can. So. For the king before whom I also speak freely, know these things, for I am convinced that none of these things escapes his attention, since this thing was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do believe. Then Agrippa said to Paul, you almost persuade me to become a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains. Acts chapter 26, verses 26 through 29. That's a very powerful moment that Paul has with King Agrippa. And it's a very looked upon verse that his response is, whether he's saying it in a way of, Paul, you're almost persuading me to become a Christian, or he's saying it in the sense of, Paul, do you think you can persuade me in this one conversation? Whatever it may be, the fact is Paul is evangelizing, and he is doing it on a scale that is amazing, the way that God is using him. But really the lesson here is, you almost persuade me to become a Christian. Persuading people, that almost sounds, deceitful. It almost we've turned that word persuasion and persuading into something that sounds icky. But actually, biblically speaking, persuading is something that God commands us to do. We're actually to use our brains and to persuade people. That's what you have in Jude. You have in multiple places Paul talking about persuading people, that we need to be in that way helping people, winning arguments. Jude 3, we are to contend for the faith. This word contend is basically this defending and a fighting, not in a manner of course, being harsh or being rude, but it is something to say that does God expect us to use our capabilities to help people to see His truth? Are we to sit there as Paul did and appeal and persuade and say, I really want to persuade you? Yes, we are. We're to do that. And in a world that we're in today, people almost look at that as, no, I don't, that's offensive, or I don't want to badger people. Well, you don't want to do those things either, but you just need to realize that when you're persuading someone to faith and to believe in God, it's not with a gun to their head. It's with your actions. It's with your words. it's with God's words. And so you're trying to appeal to them to look at Scripture with you, or you're trying to take their worldview and get it to be seen through a lens of Christ. And that requires you to know what He says, and it requires you to potentially also be exposed to some of those worldly teachings, so it's not completely catching you off guard. But when we are not persuasive with actions, with deeds, with Scripture, when we don't rightfully handle the Word of God, and we're not trusted to do so, then it's going to make persuading someone much more difficult. If you've ever had a conversation with someone about something that you have no clue what you're talking about, you will not be persuasive. That's just a fact. So you need to know the basics of something when it comes to Christianity. It's a part of what we're going through right now. You need to know, you don't need to know everything in the Bible. You pray one day, you read through the Bible and you study it, but you don't have to know every little thing, every little question, but you do need to know some things to at least be able to have a conversation with persuading people. So that's another point, but the whole point of starting off this way with Acts 26 is transitions are scary. They're scary. When faced with transitions in life, many revert to childish tendencies of withdrawal. That's just true. The unknown is often so uncomfortable for us. You may remember transitioning from high school graduation to a job or to college and how anxiety-filled you were. You may remember transitioning from a single person to being a married one, getting used to living with someone after living alone as an adjustment. You may have transitioned and moved states. You may have moved jobs. Transitioning is scary at times. It just is. You may be transitioning into parenthood. That's something too. That's a big jump. However, transitions are important for growth. You know, if your kid says, I don't want to transition into this next grade or whatever, you can't just sit here and, well, you can just stay in kindergarten forever then. I mean, no, it would be terrible as a parent. It's like, of course you want to stay in kindergarten. It's awesome. But you got to keep going. You know, Ariel's at the age right now, she's in third, and we've had to have a very real conversation of school isn't always fun because she's finally reaching that point of like, hey, you know, this is not like first grade, and it's like, no, it's not. And, you know, I try to withhold my tongue to say, buckle up for the next, it doesn't get any easier, the next 9 years, you know, or whatever, you just progress on and on, 8 years. But anyway, so the whole point is transitions are scary, and we understand that. They can be uncomfortable. One transition is to bring a prospect into a Bible study, and it's probably the most uncomfortable part next to addressing sin within that Bible study. Trying to turn someone's conversation in from you care for them to making that leap into studying the Bible is a hard transition. And it's something that's important, though, because if we do not transition into a study and we're only doing benevolent work, food pantry, sending cards, for no other reason to make people feel good, we need to understand that although the intent is there, that is not our mission for Christ. If you never introduce someone to Jesus and you're only keeping His love and His grace and His mercy and His goodness that is fueling you to be benevolent, but not actually giving them the source of God, then it does them very little, honestly. There are so many people, even within the world, who are either Christian influenced by generation that have fallen away from God, but they're still benevolent. There's a lot of people who help the world, and Jesus says we'll always have the poor. He said you'll always have them. That means anyone who tries to spend their life solving wars, because He also says we'll always have war, or trying to solve world hunger and poor, it's a noble thing. But just know that the Maker of the earth said it's going to always be there. There's always going to be war. There's always going to be poor people. So the mission is not always to say, how are we going to, resolve those situations? You need to prepare people for once this world is over, where they're going. And of course, there's a balance between these things. It's okay to be benevolent. You absolutely should be you should have benevolence within a congregation. People should be good to people. The Bible has no ifs, ands, or buts about saying, just go do good things. That's Scripture. I mean, we get so caught off guard by that, but that is actually just very biblical. Christians are salt of the earth. A part of that is just you being a very good person comparative to people around you, solely because of Christ influencing you and you influencing everyone else. But the other half of it is, a part of being a good person and being like Jesus is to help save their soul. That's just, you can't escape that. That's going to be a part of the equation. And a lot of times today, it's like, well, I just want to be a good person. I just want to help people. The best thing you could do for someone is to help them find Jesus. And you have to put that in your mind so that it's a driving force within you, that just as much as you want to hand the homeless man some money and some food and some shelter or whatever, and you should. There should be something within you that says you should do that. You should be equally as concerned about where that man or woman is going to spend their eternity and help their soul, if not more so. Do you have a comment?
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that our perception of poor, we are so ridiculously blessed.
Absolutely.
That our perception of poor is quite a bit off of what truly poor is.
I agree with you.
And a lot of times when you go into circumstances where you're working with people that we consider to be poor, they're happier than those who have so much.
I agree with you.
So it's not like we have to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
We do need to handle the eternity situation, but a lot of times they're happier than we are.
No doubt about it. And also, maybe another point to that point is a lot of breakdown when you try to find what's helping poverty is not just a money situation. They're broken people oftentimes. And how do you help resolve broken people? You take them to God. So much of our world tries to influence and fix issues that they literally cannot fix. They think, well, we'll just give poor people money. They'll probably be poor and without money again soon, or homeless people money. They're broken. They need love, and they need to know that they're cared for, and they need people who are patient with them. You're not going to get that in any other way but the church and through God and His people. So these are things to ponder. It's not wrong to help people. It's just it's wrong when we have a mindset of only doing good. So we understand these things. This is about transitioning, though, from these things that are just doing good to actually taking that step out to say, okay, I need to study the Bible with this person. The transition bridge from compassion card ministry to Bible study is visitation. These visits have different motives than the new mover visits. The new mover visits are you're trying to gain some kind of knowledge about who they are and what they, where they're from and things like that. Whereas when you're prospects, you're people who you're already investing in, you're already sending them compassion cards. We want to know if these prospects are viable, if they're open to hear the gospel, if we need to remove them from our list. The transition visitation from the card ministry aims to secure a Bible study. Our job is to knock on the door. So, you could wrap this up in 5 seconds and say, what is this prospect visits to the transition? It's knocking on the door, and that's the very short version. But that's the part that we need to know. It's going to involve all this planning, all this compassion cards, all these things that we've done from afar to now you're up close. That's basically what this process is. If prospects are unreceptive, then we don't have to, we can move them off the list. And if they are receptive, we put them on the single card list, which is just, I believe that's just where they're receiving one, not a whole tons of cards at one time, right? They're just
One card with many signatures.
That's right. One card with many signatures. That's what that means if you're not familiar. So Mark 6:11, whoever will not receive you nor hear you when you depart from there, shake off the dust under your feet as a testimony against them. We just need to understand that, if someone's not receptive, you can continue on your way and let someone else, continue to pick up that process. Not everyone is planting, not everyone's watering. It's what we learn from Scripture, but God is always giving the increase, right? So you can plant, and some people may not be ready, and that's okay. You don't just sit there and badger people. We do our best while they're receptive to the things which we are sending them and doing for them, and if it seems that door is closed, then we can take them off our list for a while. After 4 weeks of prospecting, whether through community service projects, compassion cards, we make the visit. We strike when the iron is hot, and it's scary. But when we participate in evangelism, Jesus is with us. That's what he tells us. The Great Commission tells us to go into all the world and to preach the gospel. And we have to get comfortable with doing that. We're so unable to even have a mere conversation with family, with friends. And what I mean by that is we've just made it where it's not an option to ourselves. That the idea of going to some stranger's house and talking about these things is very overwhelming. But I want you to imagine in your mind, in your own life, if you were able to talk about Scripture more with your family, if you were able to talk about it more with people in here, like if you just freely did that, you just brought it up, you talked about Jesus more and more. You found yourself not running from conversations about the Bible, but trying, you're intrigued, you're invested in those things. You would find that the process of going to do a visit would be far less scary than someone who's never had any of those conversations in general. Family, friends, even church people, to going to a stranger's house. Well, that's going to be tough. And like we talked about, not everyone's going to these people's door. We have a few people who are signed up for these things. And so this is like a cog wheel, and we've already talked about maybe that's not your spot. That's okay. You don't have to immediately retreat into a cave and not come here for 5 weeks. That's not what we're talking about. It is good to imagine, that the church, in whatever way she can be, is being evangelistic. But that can look different in a lot of ways, and we've discussed that in other weeks. We won't take any more time, but it could look many different ways. And by the end of this, I'm going to actually point out one of those ways, how you can be a part of this process, even with the transitions, and not have to do any of that groundwork specifically, but we still need people who are helpful, and we'll talk about that. So I want you to take a look at the transitioning training cards, whether you have one with you or up on the screen, and we're going to kind of go through this a little bit. First is select. We've already looked at how we gather contacts through various means. Our bookmarks remind us to pray for those who are listed and eventually transition them to the prospecting stage of the evangelism model. So prospect is ones who we're kind of, instead of a wide range of people who are kind of just contact lists who we know need help, a prospect is, I don't like that wording, but there's just really no other wording to kind of just show that it's turning from a large group of people of contact lists to you're kind of narrowing in on this one and focusing on this one and say, how can we help this person? And so that's what a prospect is, and then you're starting to try to do these things with compassion cards and other things, praying for those people. And then we'll continue to use community outreach to gather contacts and even add additional means of gathering them. However, for today's purpose, we're just going to move on. For many are called, but few are chosen, Matthew 22:14. We have to call a lot of people with the gospel to find the few who are actually going to help or to respond to it. And as we talked about already, it's already a devastating thing that God tells us that many are called and few are coming to him. But how much more devastating is it if few even call? Then how minute is that number? You get what I'm saying? If 10 out of 100 will come to the Lord, and that's probably very positive outlook of the situation. What happens if that 100 is based upon people being evangelistic, and now people in the church who are not being evangelistic are not reaching out, so not even the few will come. So let's say now it's 1 out of 100. Do you see the devastation of that? We have to be people who are willing to reach out into this world, because few already, even if we reach the whole world strategically with God's help and do the right things, very few, comparative to the rest of the world, will actually accept the call. So that's a driving force, not to discourage you. It prepares you for the fact that it takes a lot of people saying no to get to a person who may say yes, but also it should encourage you to say, if we don't go, then such a very few will have opportunity to know the Lord. And that shouldn't be an option for us if we love him. The next is specify. When there is a triggering event, we move a contact into the prospecting step. It's kind of how we move that through. It's like, this is a person who's just one of a few or one of many who are kind of saying these are people we're keeping an eye out, but it's a whole congregation of people who have put these contacts forward. And now you're just kind of looking at them, and when one kind of steps out and says, well, this event happened, they moved, they were married, they had a child, or maybe more negatives, they got cancer, their mom or dad just passed away, their spouse passed away, they're hurt, whatever the case may be. It's an opportunity to now pull them to focusing on them and saying, how can we help that individual and get to know them in the process. He compares it to Anne McCullen, a recent widow of an elder at the Delaware Church of Christ, asking if anyone could help her mow her grass. They rearranged that. However, there are non-Christians who could use that help in many ways. There are disabled veterans who need gutters cleaned, grass mowed, gardens mulched, and the like. These are ways that we are earning the Bible study. That's something that doesn't get talked about enough. But part of the reason you walk up to someone on the street and you say, do you want to study the Bible? And they may just ignore you entirely or say, absolutely not, is because you really haven't earned the Bible study. You have to show people that you love them or that you care for them. And a part of doing that is service. That's what we see in Jesus all the time. So benevolence is not wrong, like we talked about. It's when benevolence is really the end of what we're trying to do. Well, as long as we just give a bunch of food out to the homeless, it's like, that's great on one hand, but on the other hand, completely not helping their soul at all. So what we're doing with our benevolence should always be tied to how can we help this person find truth. It's important. So notice prospecting in from what we're reading here. Listen to what Jesus is doing, how he earns the study. Matthew 9:35 through 38. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Matthew 9:35 through 38. So he's healing every sickness and disease. He's moved with compassion for these people. That's who Jesus is, and that's who he continues to be. That's who we should be. We should be moved with compassion to help people, and a part of helping them is to be a shepherd to sheep who are lost, to help guide them in the ways of truth. You notice it wasn't just about feeding their bellies and healing their sicknesses. He had compassion for them. Why? Because they were lost. That's when he was having compassion for them as well. He didn't stop with their bellies. He didn't stop with healing their bodies. He said, I also have compassion for the fact that they are just sheep without a shepherd, and that's no good. Once we have built a relationship, it's time for the visit, so supply. After 4 weeks of compassion cards, we will designate a day where we will allow anyone who has volunteered or signed up to visit the prospect. We'll have our first meeting on December 8th, which is probably a good time to talk about it right here. So those who are in my group, we will have our first meeting on December 8th. If you don't know who that is, then come see me after services. Also, if you don't know who you are, we have a email list that I will, after services today, I'm going to send a group email to those who are in that group and kind of reminding you what you said you would do, whether that's come as a person. Thank you very much, Debbie. I really appreciate that. Whether you're a person who is actually going to have the Bible study, or you're just a silent helper, I'll get that list to you and kind of say, hey, this is what you've signed up for. And if you could be at that meeting, I actually don't know. We're having a lot of people each week meet. Is anyone meeting over there next week, Bill? Do you know? So I may have potentially my group may meet in here. I don't know for a positive fact yet. But just no matter what, get with me on December 8th. I'll have another announcement that morning. Whether we're in here or over there, it doesn't matter. After services, that group will meet. And what we'll be doing in that first meeting is talking about the time that we are going to be doing those visits once a month. So you may remember him talking about, Rob Whitaker talking about Mission Mondays or Transition Thursdays. And you may be wondering kind of like what that is. That's exactly what this process we're talking about. It has different names because the idea is whatever day you say it's going to be on, you have something clever that sticks in your mind. You know, if we did it after church on Sundays, there's some congregations who feel that that's beneficial. You could say Seeking the Lost Sundays. You know, whatever the idea is, you know, it doesn't have to be a Monday. It doesn't have to be a Thursday. I've seen a lot of churches, when I've looked into it, who decide on Sundays. That's what works best for them. It's when they have a good number of people right after services to feel like they want to go. But the whole point of what that is, I'll get to it at the end. I'll tell you what that looks like when we meet once a month and kind of get into what that process looks like. But that's what we'll discuss at this next meeting, what works for our group as a whole. At this point in the game, we do not want to go empty-handed. A gift often opens doors to the conversations and leads to an invitation inside. We need to bring them something. It's suggested that that this is an opportunity where those who cannot knock doors can participate in evangelism. We need someone to bake cookies or homemade pies or candies or other snacks or goodies. I don't know if our specific congregation is doing those things as well. I don't think it could hurt if that's something that you said, hey, I'd like to be able to provide this for Mission Mondays or Transition Thursdays for some of the houses you go to. Obviously, the houses are not going to be in contact with each other, so if you only made 10 little things to give out, then we would give out 10 to whoever the first 10 people were, and then the other people, you know, whatever that looks like. But also it would depend on how many we're going to that day, so that would be communicating to that group who all will be visited. Usually we'll put something like a tract in there, what to expect when visiting the church, a copy of House to House, Heart to Heart, a church business card with worship times. Gifts tend to open doors. Don't go empty-handed. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men, Proverbs 18:16. Send. We earned the Bible study. We send out teams just like Jesus did when he sent the apostles out 2 by 2. We support each other. One will be the silent partner. We will learn what this entails during our lesson on conducting the Bible study. We do not want to send a single man in today's society, considering a man in his 30s is this country's worst enemy right now. I don't know why, but it's just what it is. So it's something that a single man is not really a good just going to the door. That's not going to be something that people are going to want to invite you in. If they see, however, a married couple, that would be good. I know that 2 women can be helpful, depending on if you don't have a husband, and maybe you grab a sister in Christ, although sometimes that can be, maybe that's not comfortable either, depending on the women who are going. That may not be maybe an ideal situation. A man with a child, that can work as well. It's just the idea of sending a single man is typically not helpful, so we try to group them to sending 2 at a time. When the prospect answers the door, we'll follow with the guidelines. Let the prospect talk and answer. We want to open dialogue. Do not press at this time. So you may say, hi, my name's Lynn, and this is my wife, Kylie. We're from Windsor Church of Christ. We've been sending you cards lately. And the idea is, hopefully at this point, they take over for a second and say, we've received those cards. Thank you so much for sending them. Thank you for caring for us. And let them talk. Don't try to interrupt. Let them continue to talk. If it gets stale and awkward for a second, pick the conversation back up. If the dialogue does not open up, you may add that we are friends with this individual. This would be the person who put those people on the prospect list. So it's like, who are you? And the cards haven't opened them up to wanting to talk. Then you could just simply say, if it was Bill, we're friends with Bill. And that now can open up another part of the conversation. Oh, we love Bill. We love them. Thank you. And may continue to talk for a while. You can continue to say, yeah, they go to church with us. The goal is to be invited inside. It's not to press and to ask them to take you inside. It's to have a dialogue and a conversation that hopefully, with the fact that you've sent compassion cards and other things to show that you care, that they're not looking at you as an enemy. They're going to see you as a person who cares for their soul, or at least who has shown compassion to them with prayers and other things, and will say, you want to come in for a minute? You would say yes. That's what you're hoping will happen. You try to find a way to connect with them in a short amount of time. If you see stuff in their garden, if it's a beautiful garden, say, this is a very nice garden you have here. You're obviously, a green thumb. You're amazing. You could say, I kill cactuses or whatever. We have bamboo or whatever you want to talk about. You try to make it funny. Try to make it something that stands out in their mind of making some talk that interests them. You may see on bumper stickers or other things that they're grandparents, that they have children, whatever the case may be. You can just simply say, we have a wonderful youth group here at Windsor. Whatever you just casual conversation. Bob, you have something?
I just noticed too, because I've had Mormons in my house this past year, and this really struck me because they are very observant,
Mm-hmm.
very, and so they notice things
Mm-hmm.
in your house, things you may have outside.
Yeah.
Strike up conversation. So it's just exactly.
Thanks. Everyone's pulling together to get me through here.
For those on the transition team, right, we have to be very observant to pick up on things to connect.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Absolutely. And you don't want to be, and because it's a great point, and you don't want to cross the line of, don't be weird. I don't know, that we should just make shirts that say that. I honestly think we should. Just don't be weird. Evangelism, don't be weird. So, Mormons have good tactics. They also have things that make them where it's off-putting. You don't want to be, don't be sitting here looking in someone's house, like really trying to grasp something to have a conversation with. Everything is natural flowing. If you see something, just, make a comment if it feels natural. If it doesn't, there's no reason to make a comment about it. Just make sure. I appreciate Bob's comment because it's very true. You need to be mindful of things, but you can get to the point where you're looking not at them and you're sitting here looking at things in their house. Like, it can be kind of weird. Don't do that. Just, act like if you're walking to a friend's house. This is a beautiful home. I really like these paintings on this wall. whatever else, you obviously have a beautiful family, and there's tons of picture of a family, whatever, so anyway, good point. Also, it's going to be very tempting to go to what you know, which is what we've already talked about. But the problem is, so if someone has a football team, your eyes may go to that, and it may be very natural to want to talk about football. Don't do that. That is not something you want to do, like we've already talked about in other classes, because you could end up making a conversation where you make a jab to be funny, which is to say, oh, this is you see a football team say, they're not doing too good this year, are they? Not a great way. Even though it's something that's kind of funny to do with other people, a random person that you're in their house, that may feel natural because you say, hey, it's a football team that I recognize. But don't try to go there with those things. Make it a neutral, something that's going to not be jabby, and try to have that kind of humor with someone you just met. Okay, very good, Bob. I appreciate your insight there. Be observant. Try to be observant. It'll help. Ask the 3 questions. Matthew 10, 11 through 13. It's just, once again, talking about people who inquire. It says, now whatever city or town you enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and stay there till you go out. And when you go into a household, greet it. If the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. Ask 3 questions that will indirectly guide them to ask you for a Bible study. So the 3 questions, I think they're on the back of the card. I don't know for sure. Okay, they're on the back of the card, which is very helpful. You should keep that card. It says, what do you think about the Windsor Church of Christ? That's the first question. These people are not going to know much about them besides the fact that we have been helpful to them. We've sent them cards. We've been prayerful for them. They know this. So all they really know is hopefully positive things. So they'll say, you're very kind. Next question. Do you know a lot about the Windsor Church of Christ? They will not know a lot about the congregation. I mean, they might if they know just a general sense of the Church of Christ, but they may not know about the Windsor Church of Christ. And this may lead to them and to some being curious, and since we've been sending them cards, and they may even feel obligated to respond favorably to the next question, which is, they'll say, no, I don't know a lot about Windsor Church of Christ. The third question is, would you like to know more about the Windsor Church of Christ? If they say yes, respond immediately with, I have these booklets. I have these if you'd like to sit down and look at them together. That's in that moment, you're ready to go right into the first booklet if they say that they'd like to know more. If they say yes, you can start this Bible study, and don't forget to schedule the next one while you're in the study. If they respond with no, then you can always just say, maybe we can come back at another time. If they agree, schedule the study. Say, maybe we'll come back another time. And they'll say, oh, okay, that sounds good. Just say a date. Just throw a date out there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, and say, well, will December 15th work for you? Oh, we can't. Okay. Will January 1st work? Oh, we can't. You just keep throwing dates out there till they say yes, or they say, I just am not interested. And that's okay. Don't make them feel guilty. Don't make them feel bad. That's okay. Say okay. Did I see a hand up somewhere? No? Okay. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Janet.
Let us not forget we need to ask and make sure they have a Bible for people to study.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people don't.
Absolutely. Agreed.
That way they have a chance to do it.
Very good. Very good. I appreciate that. She said we need to make sure they have a Bible. I would suggest you will always have your Bible when you go to these. You must. You just need to. But what she's suggesting as well, have an extra copy. If they don't have a Bible, you could just simply suggest that you have one, or you could just let them use yours, whatever way you want to go about that. But having a Bible is, especially in our day and age today, they may very well have it on the phone, which could, you can simply pull it up on any of the, Bible Gateway and Bible Hub, and actually just look up a version real quick, and they can have it on their phone. It would be probably better if you actually had a physical Bible, though, with you. So if they respond with no, maybe come back another time. If that's not successful, maybe you can come to our place, could be your next response. If they don't want to do that either, that's okay. But opening your house oftentimes opens hearts. We see this with Martha's hospitality. What did it lead for Mary? What did that lead to? It led to Mary sitting at the feet of Jesus. So there's often times where if the center of our lives is Christ, then he should be the center of our home as well. And if he's the center of our home, then letting people into our Christian homes for dinner can help them to be in a spiritual atmosphere while finding Jesus is a lot easier. Or at least it should help that potentially they could be in the midst of Jesus in that way and in our influence. Ask the questions, or they may never know if they're interested in a Bible study. The worst they can do is say no and then move on. There's this verse in Matthew 7:7-8 that says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened." And I know that this is a conversation about a person with God, and people coming to the Lord. But I think a general biblical lesson here is, if we don't ask, whether that's God or other people, and then we are not going to receive. And if we don't seek, then we are not going to find. And if we don't knock, then how will a door be opened to us? And I think that's a very general, proverb. When you think about, we basically miss 100% of the shots we're not willing to take, right? I mean, that's a very easy analogy to think of. How can you possibly make the shot if you don't take the shot? So you're going to have to be willing to, seek. I have here, we must be willing to ask, to seek, and knock, or we can just expect no answer, no Bible study, and the door remaining closed on an opportunity. In conclusion, be prepared, in season and out. Always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you the reason for the hope that's in you with meekness and fear, 1 Peter 3:15. The last part, I know I'm over, but I'm just going to read this really fast. So Mission Mondays or Transition Thursdays, this is what it looks like. We should cater the meal for that night or every other month, the church, that is. This is a good opportunity to get people who are wanting to be involved, but on the sign-up sheet, they said they didn't know where to plug them in at. If you wanted, the church may cover once a month to feed the people who are at that meeting. People are getting off work. We need to be willing to cater that meal. And maybe every other month, people who are just wanting to be involved somehow, if they want to cater that meal, then that's a good way that they can be involved in this and to be talking to the group lead, which would be me, on that process. We'll get you plugged in that way. The whole idea is we meet together once a month with probably evening time over there in the annex. We'll eat, and then we will be training at that, just having opportunities to go through some of these trainings, reminding you of helpful tips, whether you're a silent listener or a person who's going to the door. We'll get out the contact lists while we're there, and we'll also have someone, which would be me, who has the spreadsheet that what's going on with the contacts. So here's an example. We have a contact named Brent Smith. We don't actually, it's an example. We ask, well, how many weeks have we been prospecting Brent Smith? We have it laid out. We can see how many cards. Week 1, he received 8. Week 2, he received 15. Week 3, he received 12. Week 4, he received 10. But we also find out week 1, he had food sent by the ladies to him. And on week 3, the youth group showed up on a Sunday evening to wash his car since he was unable to do so. So Brent has had a lot of prospecting. So what does Mission Monday allow us to do? It allows us to visit Brent. It keeps him at the front of our mind. So what it's doing is it's placing once a month where the people who are heading up the actual transition process will stay on those things. It means, we need to have these times where we are sitting down and we have the spreadsheet out to say, who have we been prospecting, who needs to go into now being approached at the door. And we do it monthly, and we'll call it whatever we end up calling it. If we do it on Monday, Thursday, Sunday, whenever, we'll work all that out. We got through it. So December 8th, I'll send out an email this week who's a part of that group. Next week, I'll announce it. We'll either be meeting in here or the next door, and we'll just have a brief first meeting.